If you've been lying awake at night, wondering if you should quit your job, this video is for you. Maybe you dread Monday mornings. Maybe you've started updating your CV, but you haven't sent it anywhere yet. Or maybe you're just tired, bone tired, and you can't work out if it's just life or if it's the job. My name's Lucy, and after 30 years leading teams, I've been in exactly the same place as you multiple times, wrestling with that decision, whether to stay, whether to go. And here's what I've learned. Most people make this decision emotionally in a moment of frustration or exhaustion. But the people who make the right decision, one they don't come to regret, take time to ask themselves 7 questions first. Today, I'm going to share those 7 questions with you. And I've also created a workbook to help you work through them. The link is in the description below. So let's crack on. Question number 1. Am I learning and growing? This is about career development stagnation. Are you being challenged? Are you learning new things? Are you developing new skills? Or do you just feel like you're going through the motions, repeating the same tasks over and over again and not learning anything new? Let me tell you a story. Earlier in my career, I was in a job. I'd been in it for about 4 years. I had a supportive boss. I had a good team. I enjoyed the day-to-day. I think I was pretty good at what I was doing, but I got to the point where I simply wasn't learning anything new. Every Monday felt identical to last Monday. I could do the job in my sleep, and at first that felt comfortable, but then comfortable started to become boring. And then, if I'm honest, boring became soul destroying. And I'd get home from work and my other half would ask, "How was your day?" And I could barely even remember. And this wasn't because it was bad, but it just wasn't memorable. It just wasn't stretching me. I realised I wasn't growing, I was maintaining, and maintaining isn't a career strategy. Here are the specific signs to watch out for. You haven't learned a new skill in over a year. Your job description hasn't changed in, say, 2 years. You're not stretched or challenged anymore. You can predict every day pretty much before it happens, and you've kind of stopped feeling proud of your work. Let's weigh up on the stay versus leave indicator. Stay if your organisation offers learning opportunities, internal moves, training budgets, opportunities to shadow colleagues in other departments, new projects, and you just haven't pursued those yet. Sometimes the growth is available, but we just haven't asked for it yet. On the other hand, leave if you've actively sought development opportunities, but you've been told no. You've had conversations with your manager and they've said maybe next year. If the organisation can't or won't invest in your growth, then maybe there's another path for you. Growth isn't a luxury, it's how you stay engaged and how you stay employable. So don't ignore this one. Question number 2 to ask yourself, is this affecting my health? This is the big one, and it's the one that people ignore for the longest time because we're taught that work should be a sacrifice. Let me be very clear, your work should not sacrifice your health, not your physical health, not your mental health. Full stop, non-negotiable. I learned this during my time as a CEO of a small charity, waking up at 4 a.m, worrying about all kinds of things, stressed when I got to work, stressed during the day, stressed when I left work. I was utterly miserable. I developed tension headaches that wouldn't shift. I snapped at people I love. I stopped exercising because I was too busy, and I survived on cups of strong tea and fast food. I told myself this was normal. I told myself this was what leadership looked like. Everyone was depending on me, so I felt I had to push through. I realised I was sacrificing my health for a job, and no job is worth that. Look out for these physical and mental well-being red flags. Chronic sleep problems, insomnia, nightmares about work, waking anxious, physical symptoms, headaches, digestive issues, constant colds, high blood pressure, using alcohol, food or other substances to alleviate stress, persistent anxiety or low mood that lifts on holidays at weekends but comes right back on a Sunday evening, loss of interest in things you used to enjoy, irritability or emotional numbness, and thoughts like, I can't do this anymore. So let's apply our stay versus leave indicator. Stay if the health impact is recent, so last few months, and it feels temporary, maybe in response to a time-bound project. Maybe the stress is due to a new role or a particular deadline, and you have support systems in place. In those circumstances, this kind of stress could be managed short term. On the other hand, leave if the health symptoms are chronic, they've been lasting over 6 months, you've tried to address them, say with therapy, you've visited a health professional, you've had conversations with your manager, and nothing's improving. Your body is giving you information. Listen to it. You cannot be excellent at work if your health is failing. Leaving isn't weakness, it's self-preservation, and sometimes it's survival. Question number 3. Do my values align with this organisation? This is about cultural fit, not do I like my colleagues? That's different. This is deeper. Do you fundamentally believe in this organisation and what it does? I once worked with a leader who was great at her job. She worked in a non-profit and everything on paper was fantastic. But she came to me because she was really troubled by what she saw as a disconnect between the values of transparency and openness that she really valued and the culture at her organisation where leadership kept information very close to their chests, things weren't shared openly with the rest of the team, and she just felt troubled by that. In fact, she was spending all her energy trying to protect her team from a leadership culture that she disagreed with fundamentally. She told me that she felt like she was constantly fighting the organisation. So that's what I mean by a values misalignment. In fact, in my own career, it was values misalignment which led me to focus on the non-profit sector in the first place. Here are some signs to watch out for. You disagree with how decisions are made, even though you might agree with the decisions themselves. You feel like you're compromising your integrity regularly. You find yourself saying, I don't agree with this about company initiatives. You're embarrassed when people ask you where you work. You're tired of constantly trying to change the culture from within, and you've stopped speaking up because nothing ever changes. So let's weigh this up on our stay versus leave indicators. Stay if your personal values align with the organisation's stated mission, but not with the current leadership. Sometimes leadership can change and culture can shift. If you have energy to be part of that change and you can see there are allies around you, maybe stay to be part of that change. On the other hand, leave if the values misalignment is baked in to the organisation's DNA, into its mission, vision, values. If the way they operate fundamentally contradicts what you believe is right, you can't change that from a middle management position. And staying could erode your sense of self. This is particularly important for purpose-driven professionals. You went into this sector to make a difference. If your organisation is undermining that mission through the way it operates, that isn't a small thing, it's fundamental. It means you're not making the difference that you set out to make. On to question 4. Is there a path forward here? This question is about honestly assessing whether there are opportunities for promotion, a sideways move, development within that organisation. Sometimes we assume there's no path forward without ever actually checking, and sometimes, on the other hand, we stay hoping for a path that doesn't exist. When I was working in fundraising leadership, I had a team member who was excellent at his job. He'd been in the same role for 3 years and was clearly ready to take on more responsibility, but it was a really small organisation, so there was no development path for him really. So we had an honest conversation. I told him, you're fantastic. I'd love to be able to offer you more responsibility and a progression route to a more senior role, but the organisation doesn't have room for that. So let's talk openly about next steps for you. That honesty between us meant that he departed eventually on good terms to a more senior role in a different organisation, and he's done really well and we've stayed good friends. He didn't waste time hoping for something that wasn't going to happen in the timeframes that he wanted it to. Here's what to look out for. Have you had honest career conversations with your line manager? Does your organisation have a track record of promoting from within? Are there people ahead of you who are likely to move on soon, creating opportunities? Could a lateral move give you new skills and open up different paths. Is the organisation growing? Is it stable? Or is it shrinking? So over to our stay versus leave indicators. Stay if there's a genuine path forward, either a promotion possibility in the next 12 to 18 months, or alternative, a lateral move that could give you fresh skills and experience. And you've had an open conversation confirming this, not some vague one day, someday promises. On the other hand, leave if your path is blocked, either structurally because there are no roles to move into, or personally, maybe you've been passed over for promotion, or if the only path forward involves waiting around for another 5 years. Your career is too valuable to spend it in a holding pattern. Don't stay hoping for a promotion that your manager has never actually promised, but don't leave without having that conversation first. Ask directly, what would my path for growth look like here over the next couple of years? Listen carefully to the answer. On to question number 5. Can I afford to leave right now? This is the financial reality check, which I'm afraid we can't ignore. I've put it 5th intentionally because I don't want money to be the first thing that you consider, but it does have to be an important part of the equation. Here's my own story. When I decided to leave that CEO role and start my own consultancy, I knew roughly 6 months in advance that that's what I was going to do. So I started putting some money aside each month to tide me over. I didn't leap impulsively. I spent 6 months planning. I had open conversations with my partner about finances, and I started developing my consultancy on the side, which meant when I did make the leap, I already had some clients that had booked me for projects. This meant that when I finally handed in my notice, I wasn't panicked, I wasn't scared. I'd done some of the groundwork. Here are some things that you need to consider. What are your non-negotiable expenses? Are there things you could cut? Could you cover 3 to 6 months between jobs? Do you have dependents relying on your income? And what does the job market in your field look like right now? Could you leave for another job, or would you need to leave first and then do that searching? These are all things you should consider. So over to our stay versus leave indicators. Stay if leaving right now would create genuine financial hardship. You need to be able to pay your rent. You need to be able to feed your family. And the job isn't creating serious health damage. No job is worth damage to your mental or physical health. If you've decided to stay, use this time strategically to start building up some savings, start making some contacts, and start thinking about maybe a potential move in the future. Create an exit plan. Staying isn't failing. Sometimes it's a smart thing to do. On the other hand, leave if you've got some financial buffer, you've built up a bit of savings, maybe you could reduce expenditure for a while, maybe your other half is earning, maybe you've got another job lined up, or if the health cost of staying outweighs the financial cost of leaving. Sometimes protecting your health has to come first, even if the finances aren't perfect. Here's what I want you to understand. Financial constraints are real. If you can't afford to leave right now, that's not a moral failing. But don't let financial fear keep you trapped forever. Start building your runway to the next thing. Even small amounts can add up. And if the job is genuinely damaging your health, sometimes you just have to leave. Your health is the foundation everything else is built on. Question number 6. Have I done everything I can to improve the situation? This is the personal accountability question. And sometimes it's uncomfortable because it requires us to look at our own role in this situation. Sometimes the problem isn't our job. Sometimes the problem is our way of communicating. Sometimes it's our approach. Sometimes it's our boundaries. Sometimes it's our way of communicating. And if that's the case, those same problems could follow us to our next job. Here's an example from someone I know who she'd convinced herself that her manager hated her, she was rubbish at her job, and she had to leave. Yet when I asked her, well, what feedback have you had that tells you these things? She said, well, none, it's just my manager never gives me any feedback. And so I said, well, have you asked them? And she said, no, I think it's their job to give me feedback. And of course it is their job to give feedback, but she then asked the manager to give her some feedback and said, I really value regular feedback. And they said, I thought you were doing fine because you never asked for any feedback. So it was a bit of a circular thing going on there. So sometimes it's in your own gift to get the feedback you require. And she didn't need to leave that job. Nobody thought she was rubbish. In fact, they thought exactly the opposite. And she stayed for another few years. So, sometimes it's on you to do things differently to get the outcome that you want. Here are some questions to ask yourself. Have I communicated effectively with my manager? Have I asked for what I need, whether that's flexibility, whether that's resources, whether that's support, whether that's training? Have I set clear boundaries, or do I say yes to everything? Have I sought out opportunities, or have I waited, expecting them to come to me? Have I invested in my own development? Am I bringing my best self to work? So let's turn to our stay versus leave indicator. Stay if you realise you haven't actually tried to improve things. Have the difficult conversations, ask for what you need, set boundaries. Give it 3 to 6 months of genuine effort and you might be surprised at what changes. On the leave hand, if you've done all this, you've had the conversations, you've asked for support, you've set the boundaries, you've talked to your manager openly, and nothing changes. At that point, you've done your part. The organisation has shown you what it's all about. Believe them. Might be time to leave. This question isn't about blaming yourself. It's about making sure you've done your part and making sure you're leaving from a position of strength, not a position of weakness. When you've genuinely tried everything, you can leave with your head held high and 0 regrets. And question number 7, what's my gut telling me? So this question is all about your intuition, and I've deliberately put it last because it isn't the first thing you should listen to, but it is an important part of the mix. Your gut can be clouded by fear, it can be clouded by exhaustion, it can be clouded by a bad week. That's why I wanted to work through the 6 practical questions first. But once you've done that analysis, your intuition has valuable information for you. Here's what I've observed. When people know they need to leave, they just know. There's a quiet, persistent voice underneath all the fear and all the logic that just says, it's time to go. And when people know the opposite, when they know they need to stay, they know that as well, even though sometimes that's hard. In that case, a different voice is saying, not quite yet, there's something else here for me. But knowing in your heart doesn't make a difficult decision easy, but it can make it clearer. Here are some questions to help you access your intuition. If money, fear, and other people's opinions weren't factors, what would you do? Imagine it's a year from now and you stayed. How would you feel? Now imagine it's a year from now and you left. How would you feel? What would you tell a close friend in this exact same situation? When you think about staying, where do you feel it in your body? And when you think about leaving, where do you feel it? Hopefully these questions might help. So turning to our stay and leave indicator. Stay if your gut says, not yet, there's more for me here. Trust it. Sometimes we need to get through some hard times to reach the breakthrough on the other side. On the other hand, leave if your gut says, this is hurting me, I need to go. Even if it's scary, even if the timing isn't perfect. When your deepest knowing says it's time, it's time. Your intuition has been collecting data the whole time you've been in this job. And sometimes it's got more information than your brain has caught up with yet. It knows things your logical brain hasn't processed yet, so don't ignore it. Now, I know that this is a lot to process, so I've created a downloadable workbook which walks you through these questions to help you make up your mind if you're grappling with a stay or go situation in your current job. There's space to write your answers with scoring guidance to help you evaluate and help you come to a decision. The link is in the description below, so grab it now while you're thinking about this and work through it at your leisure, and I really hope it helps. So those are your 7 questions. 1, am I learning and growing? 2, is this affecting my health? 3, do my values align with this organisation? 4, is there a path forward here? 5, can I afford to leave right now? 6, have I done everything I can to improve the situation? And 7, what is my gut telling me? Now, here's what most career advice won't tell you. Sometimes Staying is the brave move, and sometimes leaving is. The key is to make the decision consciously, not reactively. If you stay, stay actively, stay with a plan. I'm here for 12 more months to build up my skills, learn what I can, and take everything I've learned onto my next role. Set boundaries and ask for what you need. If you leave, leave cleanly. Give proper notice, don't burn bridges, leave with your head held high, knowing that you did absolutely everything you could to make things work at your current role. And if you're still not sure after working through all these questions, that's okay. Sometimes I'm not sure yet is the honest answer. In that case, give yourself a time frame. I'll reassess in 3 months and have another look at it. Put it in your calendar and don't stay in indecision forever. One final thought. Your career is long. One job, even a bad one, is just a chapter. It's not the whole story. Whether you stay or whether you go, you're allowed to change your mind later. No decision is permanent. I hope these questions have given you some clarity. I'd love to have feedback in the comments. Let me know what you think. Are you leaning towards staying or leaving? Your story might help someone else in the same situation. If the video was helpful, do give it a like so that more people get the chance to see it. And if you're not subscribing already, then please subscribe as well. I create content every week to help purpose-driven professionals thrive at work without sacrificing their well-being. Thank you so much for watching. A great video to watch next is 10 signs you're heading for burnout. I'll link to it below in the description. And whatever you decide about your job, I'm rooting for you. You deserve work which fulfills you and doesn't deplete you. See you next time.